Patreon Q&A 153. There's going to be spoilers for all of the series that I'm going to be talking about, so tread carefully. So Sean H basically asked if I too thought that Nezu was the traitor, given the developments in chapter 323, but then he watched my videos and saw that I agreed with him, but then he asked if I thought that he was maybe like a proto-Nomu, similar to how Kurogiri was, and also maybe he was even like a sleeper agent, and I'm assuming he means something kind of like a Manchurian Candidate. And I'll say yes to the former for sure. I do think that he is something of a Nomu. But as for the sleeper agent stuff, or maybe him being subconsciously controlled, maybe, but he just seems so autonomous about his actions and everything that it would be some super complex subconscious Manchurian Candidate type of stuff if that was the case. But it is a possibility. But now I just want to replay all of the Nezu information that I've been talking about for the last 3 days, because it was like broken up into a few videos and it kind of confused some people because of that. Like, I've gotten a few DMs from you guys. So I just want to use this video to compile all of the information of why I personally think that Nezu is the traitor in My Hero Academia. Tokoyami comments that this metal plate structure seems specifically designed to deal with Shigaraki's awakened quirk, which spreads to other surfaces. He asks why the director had already started to set up this plan even before the cultural festival, when there was no such information about his quirk. Nezu says that he just followed his instinct, even without any concrete evidence. He says that even something incomprehensible or unnecessary can be the missing step to reach the end of a challenging path. Oh, is this what I think it is? Did Horikoshi just tell us that Nezu is the traitor? Now, before you get too upset with me, just understand that we're just talking here. I'm not saying it's guaranteed Nezu is the traitor, but what I am saying is that it's odd that Horikoshi has decided to specifically convey this sequence and Tokoyami's dialogue the way that he did. And also, I'm aware that Nezu was one of the suspects for being the traitor. I mean, I've been personally told this many times by you guys. After Tokoyami said this, I backtracked, and it's all kind of making sense, unless I'm like giving myself confirmation bias. But let me just lay it out for you. And of course go over devil's advocate, because there's two sides to this. So before I go into speculation territory, let me just say that it absolutely makes sense that Nezu could literally be following his instinct, because after all, his high specs quirk gives him super intelligence. In fact, in chapter 66, it says it gave him above human intelligence. So, like I said, it makes sense that he could come up with this and predict what was going to happen. Why not? But that's boring. Let's try to find a way to make him the traitor. When the traitor or the mole was first mentioned in chapter 83, it's brought up by Present Might, and it causes like a mild discourse at first. But Nezu says, you know, for what it's worth, I trust all of you, but even I have no way to prove my own innocence, and that totally makes sense. That's something Nezu would say. But then he says, anyhow, the task at hand is to ensure the student's safety. In light of this potential mole, there's something I've been considering for a while now. That is, and then it gets cut off by All Might getting a phone call. And I always thought that was interesting. But given the new information that we have now, it's possible that Nezu was talking about this, you know, reinforced UA security system. So the next time that the mole is being talked about is in chapter 242, and after the teachers have like their pre-war arc little meeting discussion, it come to a panel that says like a few days later, and we see Nezu talking to All Might, and he says they've been in the dormitories for months now, and we've seen no suspicious behavior from anyone. In other words, none of the students are spying for the League of Villains. The next time the League makes a move, assuming we'd find no connection then. But another interesting thing about this sequence is that when Nezu is saying this, he's looking at a picture of All Might and Tsukauchi. And if we go back to chapter 83, when All Might was interrupted by the phone call, it was Tsukauchi who called him. And let me also remind you that Tsukauchi is also one of the prime suspects of being the traitor, not by me, but by you guys. Now, there's a few other things that I always thought were very interesting about Nezu. Back in chapter 66, when his quirk is being explained, it says, this animal manifested a quirk that gave him above human intelligence. There's no no other like him in the world. But going further into his backstory, it says because of his intelligence, Nezu can perfectly recall anything. As such, Nezu holds grudges from being experimented on, feelings that are exclusive to the human species, which might interfere with his thought processes. So is that a possible clue as to Nezu being the traitor because he wants revenge on all humans, maybe? That's a possibility. But also, if we go back to the whole thing about him being the only one in the world, at first I just thought, hey, that's a cool little quirky thing, and it just shows that, hey, in the My Hero world, there's already anomalies on top of anomalies. Or, more deep speculation, Yujiko created Nezu. I mean, that's not too far-fetched, right? Yujiko is the experimenter dude. It makes sense to me that he would have tried to give an animal a quirk or something. Why not? Which means that Nezu has always been working with Yujiko, and maybe even Suguchi is attached to that too. Maybe not. But also, it begs the question of, okay, so if he is the traitor, then why has he gone through all of this trouble to make this super elaborate fortress? Also, if it's designed to stop Shigaraki, which is hindering his advancement, right? Now, another thing that I've been mentioning through these reviews is how it's been hammered home post-war arc that All For One is this ultra evil genius that has the foresight of everything, and he's like 17,000 steps ahead of Deku and everyone else. Is this one of those things? Did All For One want this structure to be created not to keep him out, but to keep everyone in? I don't know. Too much to speculate about, but I want you to think about this for yourself. Because one thing is for sure, and it's that Horikoshi put this here for a reason. And then Nezu says, UA boasts the greatest defense technology in the whole nation. Its security is comparable to the defense capabilities of Tartarus. And that was already like a red flag right there. Y'all know what happened to Tartarus. I mean, even the students do, because Momo brings it up immediately. She's like, Tartarus was easily destroyed by Shigaraki. And then Nezu says, UA was also broken into last year. We even witnessed the terror of Shigaraki firsthand. And when he said that, the cogs started moving in my brain again, and I was thinking, like, because UA was like the first big part of the series, which also was like the catalyst for this whole Traitor storyline. Even though it wasn't mentioned until much later on, the seed was certainly planted during this stretch of chapters. I mean, even if you go back to all of the old Traitor videos on YouTube, most of their information and clues are coming from the USJ incident. But another thing about those videos is that I would say about 90% of them do not suspect Nezu being the traitor. And hey, understandable, because even your boy definitely did not suspect that. I thought it was Hagakure for the longest time. And it was me thinking about USJ that really sealed the deal for me, because I was thinking like, okay, so Shigaraki breaks into with his, ragtag group of makeshift villains. And I was thinking, okay, so how does that situation get resolved? All Might shows up, Goku style, saves everyone. Awesome. One of my favorite moments in the series. One of my favorite moments in any battle manga / anime ever. But then I was thinking, like, why does he show up late? And then it was just, oh my God. He was late because Nezu prevented him from going there. And then I went back and reread chapter 15, and it all but confirms that it was Nezu the whole time, right in front of our faces. So chapter 15 opens up with us seeing All Might like having this internal monologue, and he's like, I can't seem to contact 13 or Aizawa. Good reasons or not, I should put my hero work ahead of teaching. That was quite foolish. What do I tell them when I show up at the end? Anyway, I should be fine in another 10 minutes, thinking that, like, I could just not go to the USA and just show up despite, not being able to get in contact with the other teachers. But then All Might being All Might, it's like, no, what am I thinking? I'm going. And as he's about to go to USJ, Nezu shows up right there at the door and says, hold on, as if Nezu was waiting there the whole time to make sure that All Might wouldn't leave. And what goes on to happen in this sequence is essentially Nezu talk no jutsus All Might into staying and relaxing. Like, he goes out of his way to make sure that All Might does not leave that room. Like, he's softening up the couch, he's getting tea ready for him. And like most of us, I'm sure, when I was first reading / watching this, I just thought, you know, it's just a coincidence. You know, Nezu shows up, he has the best interest in All Might. We assume Nezu himself doesn't know what's going on at USJ. So it's just, you know, like an unfortunate circumstance. Nothing malicious behind it because, you know, why would we suspect Nezu of being the traitor? But no, this whole time it was quite the opposite. Masterkev asks, with all of the redraws of One Punch Man happening and they're slowly moving away from the webcomic, do you think that when Garo is going to fight Saitama, there's going to be more heroes spectating him other than just Zombie Man, or do you think Zombie Man is still going to be the only one watching Saitama? So originally it wasn't just Zombie Man. It was later revealed that Flashy Flash was somehow still conscious and was able to see that fight. And Amai Mask was also aware of it too. Aside from them, I really wouldn't be surprised if there are more heroes who are able to witness that fight, which gives us more characters who are aware that Saitama is the one above all, or in their own way, because sometimes they don't even truly accept it, such as like Flashy Flash. So given that Metal Bat and Tank Top Master are there now, it's possible maybe they find out or see. L asks, what if it's all a dream and Delamante puts Saitama in a coma? Would it take away from the story in your opinion? So yeah, I would be very upset with that, and if that did happen, in my opinion at least, it would completely ruin One Punch Man. Not just from a story standpoint, but a legacy, the community, everything. It would just be one essentially scorch earthing his own series. Now, is it possible? Sure, but I just don't think he's gonna do that, or at least I hope he doesn't. Natedawg asks, you brought up on how Drive Knight might accidentally awaken God, but what if it's on purpose? What if Metal Knight made Drive Knight as an advanced AI combat machine, and Drive Knight was given sentient life by God and gave him actual purpose in life, whereas he didn't have a purpose? The purpose being bring God back to life since he made him sentient. So it is very possible, and I was thinking that, you know, there's more importance to the cubes with the overall story other than just what we've seen so far, and it's possible that Drive Knight or Metal Knight or Kuseno even came across one of these cubes, and it could be like a similar situation with Justice League, where like the Mother Box essentially gave Cyborg his power. So it could be something like that, but as for God intentionally giving Drive Knight sentience for the purpose of bringing him back to life, I just don't understand why, because everything was going according to plan with Orochi, unless God has this crazy foresight as to where he's also establishing these contingencies because he somehow knew that Saitama was going to defeat Orochi and that Drive Knight was going to be there to grab some of the cells and reconstruct them so that like a month later he can bring back Orochi then to be the sacrifice. It's kind of clunky, but ultimately I don't think Drive Knight is AI. I'm very confident in him being a cyborg, meaning that he was originally a human. And of course, you know, my other thoughts, him being the mad cyborg. Now, whether Metal Knight plays a part in that or not is really up in the air at this point, but I just don't think God at least purposely made Drive Knight do this because, you know, like what I said. Chance asks, all the Yonkos with crews and allies versus all Marines, you could do pre-time skip and post-time skip if that changes anything. So if this were to happen, I think all of the Yonkos with their allies would probably destroy the Marines simply because they're so outnumbered, not in just like foot soldiers, but just like powerhouses as well. Because if we go back to Marineford, that was basically everything the Marines had. And just one Yonko crew was pretty competitive against them. So imagine if the red-haired pirates, the Big Mom pirates, and the Beast pirates were there, they would for sure probably win. The only way the Marines would have a chance of overcoming those odds was like somehow getting Prime Garp and Sengoku back. But that's just accounting for the Marines, of course. We don't know what's going on at Marijois. You know, maybe the Gorosei are like all super Yonko level or something. And of course they have Emu, who is probably Rock. So he's like, you know, beyond Yonko probably. Dino W asks, hey, what do you think of the Marvel What If series so far? I think it was pretty awesome. The stuff with Thanos last episode was a lot of fun. Yes, it certainly was. The first episode was fine. It didn't like really excite me or anything. I just thought, you know, it was good, but it didn't really deliver the way that I was expecting like a series with potential like this could until the second episode. And then it was like, wow, this is what this series should be. And man, it really delivered. That episode was so good. And yeah, like you say with the Thanos stuff, coming into the series, that's one of the main things I wanted. I was just like, man, I hope they do like a good guy Thanos type of thing. And they did. I mean, they nerfed the crap out of him, of course, but you know, I guess you kind of have to, because if you didn't, he could have just single-handedly did everything himself, right? First Wolf asks, what are your overall thoughts on Hikari? I'm really hoping he's around Yuta's level, since his initial introduction suggested as such. Could he still end up being that strong? So I do like Hikari so far. He's much different than I expected him to be. But we still have to see how this Hikari arc fully plays out before I make my final judgment on him, because there's a chance he might go south and his character maybe turns out to be not so cool, but I don't think that's going to happen, but it's a possibility. And I do think that he will probably be seen, at least from the audience perspective, as being around Okotsu's level once we fully understand what his curse technique is. Little Ferrari asks, do you think Vegeta's Ultra Ego form is kind of like Goku's Ultra Instinct Omen form? I feel like there's more to it. I could be wrong though. So I really didn't think about that at first, but I guess it's very possible, and I certainly hope that's the case, because Vegeta does say that he discovered this form mid-fight with Granola because he pushed him to the point of being able to unlock it. Meaning that there's certainly potential there for advancements to it, and if they are trying to play yin and yang between Goku and Vegeta here, then I guess Vegeta would have a same trajectory as Goku as well, meaning that this could be the Omen or the Sign version of, you know, Vegeta's Ultra form. So hopefully after Vegeta eats his Senzu Bean, or at least hopefully he does, and maybe gets a Zenkai, because maybe in the next chapter he gets pushed close to death possibly. And then it's the Zenkai possibly that brings out the mastered Ultra Ego form possibly. And then maybe Vegeta gets his redemption. I'm not gonna hold my breath, but man, you know, I hope. Delamante asks, how do you think Yome versus Akaza would go? So this is a great question, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of YouTube videos on this. I haven't checked, but it's just such an intriguing matchup. So on paper, I guess this fight would be pretty competitive, and I guess he would be able to push Akaza even further than Rengoku did. So meaning that Himejima could realistically solo Akaza, but on the other end, Akaza could easily solo Himejima as well. So this is like a pretty compelling matchup, and if I had to bet on it, guess I'd go with Himejima then, maybe? I don't know. Man, it's so close. It's hard to say. That's pretty much it for the video today, guys. I want to thank all of my patrons for continuing to support me. I love you guys so much. And if you would like to be in next week's video, check out the Patreon. The link is in the description. $5 will give you access to the video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.